What time is it there?
8 a.m. So a little bit earlier than I usually do podcasts, but that's okay because I know it's later for you as well.
You look so glam for 8 a.m.
You should have seen me 30 minutes ago.
It
I was still in my
is,
pajamas.
yeah, I don't blame you. I'm going to be getting into mine in a minute because it's actually 10 p.m. here.
Oh, wow, you're the real trooper.
So, let's get into it because we've only got a short amount of time and I cannot wait to hear all about you and your journey. So, just spend a couple of minutes and just tell me about you and how you've got to sort of where you are today.
Yeah, so my journey really started when I was 22 years old. And so I was studying my Masters of Architecture at that time, but I was feeling this like deep misalignment within me. It was like my head was telling me to stay on this path that I had been on since high school, like going to university, getting the degree, getting a corporate job. And I was like 6 months away from pretty much being done with all of those studies. But then something within me started to pull me into a different direction. And that was when I had started my podcast, which is the Empower with Them podcast. And that became the thing that just was lighting me up. It was the thing that I wanted to spend all my time doing. Instead of studying, I wanted to be recording podcasts and building a personal brand around that. And so when I started to feel that turmoil within me, I gave myself permission to really explore that. And now at the time, like I said, I was 22 years old. And so I knew that I had so much of my life ahead of me still. And if I was feeling that deep misalignment in that moment, and I future paced like 5 years from that time, it was only getting worse and worse and worse if I was to stay in that position. So I actually made the decision to drop out of my architecture degree, quit my architecture job, and just go all in on building a brand around my podcast. And within just 8 months of doing that, I had made my very first six figures in my business. And that was kind of like the beginning of this massive journey that I've now been on with business.
Oh, that is insane, absolutely insane. What kind of misalignment were you feeling and how long was that building up for? Because that's a huge leap to give up, straightforward career pathway that you've already worked so hard to achieve. So, what did that actually feel like for you?
Yeah, it felt as though what I was doing wasn't for me, but it was for everyone else around me. And that was where the misalignment was. Like when I went through school, I was always the overachiever. I would always say yes to opportunities. And I was always like so focused on just like setting myself up for success. And so for me, like I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I finished school, but I knew that I had to pick something in terms of a degree to feel like I'm moving in some direction. And so my parents had always raised me to, pick a good degree, follow that path. And so that was really what initiated that leg in my journey for me. And then as I grew deeper on that, all of a sudden it was no longer just about, pleasing my parents with a degree, but it was about pleasing my boss with completing my degree so that then I could, grow into the architect that he wanted inside of the firm. And then there was my peers at university as well. And it was about, okay, well, like we're all in this together. We've got to finish it together. And so there was so many different people around me that it felt as though I was in that position for them. And it was only when someone actually asked me the question of, if you're to finish the next 6 months of your master's degree, who are you doing it for? And that was the first time I admitted to myself that it was for everyone but me. And so that misalignment that I felt was this like misalignment of like, I'm living my life for other people. I'm not living my life for me. And so that was that first big misalignment. But the second was like, I knew there was potential in me for more. I was seeing people online, like living these freedom lives, traveling, being the same age as me, but creating incomes online and living off their own schedule. And I felt that was like speaking into some potential that I knew was untapped within me. And so I knew that I was made for more than that 9 to 5 path that I was on. And I knew that I wasn't living my life truly in alignment with what I wanted for me. And so it was those two things that were really creating that inner conflict for me.
That's quite a mature decision to be taking at such a young age. 22. I
Yeah.
think, my dear friend Susie, she's an author, and she talks a lot about um, how particularly women in corporate industries often just do as other people think they should do. So it's like, oh, you should go for that promotion, or this is what you should do next. And we're almost grateful for that opportunity. And we go, okay, whether it's what we actually want or not. And it normally takes a lot longer to actually come to that sort of realization. So, I mean, at 22, I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think at that point, being 22 was quite young, but I had started doing some deep personal development the couple years before, like really cracking, the doors open into the personal development world. And I think also, like prior to doing personal development, I'd always been someone who was unintentionally very self-aware because I was always so growth driven, whether it was to improve my grades in school or to get chase some sort of achievement. Like I was always chasing achievements, which has its pros and cons, but one of those pros was it did make me very focused on my self-growth from a young age. So I feel like when it came to that pivotal point for me, it was really helpful to have had a lot of self-trust pre-established in myself to really like give myself that permission to lean in and explore what was coming up, and then also to like have that courage to then go after what it is that I had developed the awareness around.
And what was your friends and family's reaction when you wanted to do all of this?
Yeah, so I thought that, it was going to be a big issue. I worked it up to be something in my head, but when I actually told like my friends, my parents, and my boss, they all had the exact same reaction or response. And that was that they trusted me, like they had said to me, like, Emily, we see how hard you work, and when you put your mind to something, you never fail to succeed at it. So we trust that if this is where you're going, then you're going to succeed in this as well. And I think there was also a big piece when it came to my parents where they were like, we want to see you happy. And at that point in my life, like I wasn't happy, like I was not my best self. I was feeling these really intense emotions, like crying myself to sleep every night. And so I was very lucky to be supported by that immediate circle of mine. The only area there was a little bit of pushback was with my auntie, who had some strong opinions on me staying in the path that I was on and so on. But, I was able to really like block that out. Her opinion wasn't really one that I valued very highly, not in a negative way, but she just wasn't one of the people who I would turn to for, I guess, that kind of feedback and that kind of guidance because she wasn't around me all the time. And so I knew how to be discerning with whose opinions I would take on and whose I wouldn't.
Yeah, and that is so true. Feedback is an absolute gift, but it's the recipient's choice whether they actually take that on and say, actually, yeah, that's constructive. I appreciate that. Or that's more about them than it is about you. And you can just put it to one side and forget about it. So I think that's
Exactly.
crucial. So, what was the journey actually like? Was it difficult? Did you have highs and lows? Like, tell us.
So many. I mean, the way that I made my first 100K is definitely not the way that I wanted to make my second 100K because in that journey, when I had just dropped out of my degree, I had quit my job, there was a lot of fear driving me, right? Because I had pretty much thrown away the path that I had been on and the security I had created for myself to go all in on this thing. And so there was this mentality I had of like, I need to make this work and I need to sacrifice whatever it takes in order to make it work. Now, at that point in my journey, I was focused on speed over sustainability, which became a massive lesson for me because although I was able to make 100K in just 8 months, it was done in a way which just was not sustainable. I reached the end of that 8 month period and I burnt myself out. I was going to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack, but really it was just like stress induced muscular pains that were coming on. I had no understanding around regulating your nervous system or managing stress or how to actually like prioritize health as a business person because I was young and I was ambitious and I was hungry to just get that egoic goal of making as much money as I could, as quickly as I could, and as young as I could, right? So I was being driven by factors which aren't bad drivers when they're done in a way where sustainability is considered. But because I neglected that sustainability piece, it was a sprint, it was a hustle. I was working 7 days a week, I was staying up at
Yeah.
ridiculous hours. Like, I was doing all of the excessive measures that, the entrepreneurs could possibly do. And then I felt the effects of that because I crashed, I burnt out, and I needed time to actually recover following that first 100K. But there's big lessons in that because it really did teach me, like, first of all, like the limits, my personal limits, and like where I need to create more balance within business. But also, it taught me that the goal is not more important than your values, right? Because I had sacrificed so many of my values in the pursuit of that goal. And then having achieved that goal, I actually felt so unfulfilled and I wasn't happy with where I was. I now felt like I was back in my degree and back in that job, but instead, like, that was my business. And so it really taught me that, like, success is more fulfilling when you prioritize your values in the journey, because if it's not there in the journey, it's not going to be there at the destination. And so you really need to make sure that the process of you getting to where you want to be is actually incorporating all of the elements that you want to enjoy once you're there.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So how did you come to sort of refine it and understand sort of what your values are, other than taking a step back and slowing down?
Yeah, I mean, that was an even bigger journey in itself where, immediately I wasn't really able to fully reach that point of feeling like I've got all of those things I value and all of the feelings I desired, because once I burnt myself out, I was then in a state where I ended up attracting a domestic violence relationship in. So at the age of 23, like suffering from burnout, I'm then now stepped into a DV relationship unknowingly. And what was meant to be a burnout recovery journey ended up becoming a journey of deepening that burnout even further, over the year and a half that I was in that relationship. And so it was only after I had come out of that relationship where I was, for the very first time, able to start focusing on prioritizing the things that I valued more. And for me, that really looked like experiencing the freedom that I had created for myself in my business through actually going abroad and traveling and, experiencing the spaciousness and the luxury of having an online business and being able to work from anywhere in the world.
Where's the best place you've been?
Oh, so I went traveling to Canada for, it was about 5 to 6 months, just short of 6 months. And I would say in Canada, my favorite place that I went to was Squamish. And it's this like little, I don't know what they call them, like town or whatever, just north of Vancouver. And it was like a climbing and hiking kind of district. And I absolutely loved it because, you're in amongst the mountains, you're in amongst nature. And it was just so grounding for me to just like be with myself and to just feel like I'm able to like slow down and really like heal my soul while I was there. So that was the highlight for me in those travels.
Lovely. Do you think that it's quite hard to actually separate personal and professional when you're going through something like that? Because it kind of takes over and it's actually quite hard to separate. So did you see a big shift when you got out of that relationship in terms of your professional growth again?
Yeah, it is really challenging separating personal from professional because I really do feel that like your business is so deeply personal, or at least my business for me is so deeply personal. Like it's been such a massive piece of my journey to finding my purpose and unlocking my potential and, really like creating a life that I absolutely love. So for me, like my personal and my business was so interconnected, especially like building a personal brand. And so what I found was really challenging when I was in that DV relationship was actually like I wasn't able to expand my vision for my business. I wasn't able to grow my business. Like I was treading water in my personal life And then therefore it felt like I was treading water in my professional life as well. And so I think that as women in particular, it's so important that like we make sure the relationships we're in are ones that support us thriving and support us our success, not just in business, but as women, as human beings, because they're so interconnected. And, you know, now that
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship that feels safe and feels loving, like, and that's thriving, my business is able to thrive as well. I'm able to be in my creative more, you know, and instead of being in a survival state. And then that just comes through in everything that you do within business as well. So, yeah, for me, like my experience, it was so interconnected. And that was one of the things that was always at the top of my mind when I was in that DV relationship. I kept on thinking about my business is suffering. I'm not able to like reach my full potential of what I know I'm able to do right now in business. And I knew that was because of that relationship that I was in. But there was a period of time where because of that relationship, I was blaming my business for how the relationship was feeling, when
Yeah.
actually in reality it was the reverse in my case, where the relationship was to blame for how my business was struggling.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes you question your self-worth and yeah, your
Mm.
ability and everything. Okay. Let's talk about your business today then. So you're back on
Mm.
track. It aligns with your values. What is your business model?
Yeah, so for me, like my business model is really focused on two things. So the biggest priority for me in business is creating freedom and creating space and allowing myself to have a lifestyle that truly lights me up and is one that I don't feel like I'm trying to escape from every single day. And so when I've structured my business model, like I've really taken into consideration how can I actually accommodate to that? How can I create that spaciousness? How can I create a business that allows me to feel on purpose and aligned? And so for me, that looks like working in group containers is the way that I really grow and scale my business. And then also running events alongside that to really bring in that in-person connection and just that ability to really be able to get offline.
Yeah. Yeah. And you seem like you're very confident in terms of speaking, and I guess that's what you enjoy.
Yeah, speaking's always been something that I've loved. Like when I think back to school from the youngest of ages, I would always take part in like public speaking competitions and all of that. And so it's something that for years and years and years before I even stepped into business, I was already doing for the fun of it. And so since being in business, like a big piece of my vision is to be speaking on global stages and to be in front of crowds of tens of thousands of people, just like inspiring them and showing them what their true potential is through using my voice as well. So, bringing that into the event space at the moment and really creating stages for myself to be able to like facilitate that kind of experience on a smaller scale has been just one of the most fulfilling things for me this year.
That's amazing. What's your ideal venue to speak at on a TED Talk stage?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do a TED Talk one day, but when I have that vision in my mind of like, you know, I've made it as a speaker, it's inside of an arena, you know, like where there are people 360 around me, the stage is in the center of the arena, there's the big lights coming down, and, you know, like everyone is so small that you can barely even make out what they look like. Like that for me would be like, okay, we made it.
That sounds epic. Do you think that visualization is a good technique? Do you do that a lot? Do you picture where you want to be? Do you think that helps?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a visual person. Like being art is what I really do to express myself and express my creativity. So I'm highly visual, and I find personally like taking those moments to just sit and really like envision where do I want to be? What am I wearing in that moment? What's happening around me? I'm very like a sensory person. So this is even something that I bring into the work I do with my branding clients is facilitating those experiences for my clients to go within and actually visualize on every sensory level, like what it is they want their brand to be or what it is their vision is that they want to bring to life. And so I practice that a lot myself when it comes to connecting to my own vision or to connecting to certain goals that I really want to be stepping into, because that really allows me to start to feel the feeling of being in that moment and also feel like what resistance comes up, what fear comes up, like what parts of myself do I need to like regulate or expand further in order to really step into that version of myself who's like living and breathing that thing.
Hmm. And how did you actually come to learn to self-regulate? Because you spoke before about burning yourself out and not understanding how stress felt in terms of the physical reactions that you were having. So how did you sort of learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly did not know a thing about nervous system regulation until like the start of this year. And it was only after I had gone through that domestic violence relationship where coming out of it, I was so dysregulated that when I started to put myself into rooms with people who were the kinds of grounded leaders that I wanted to be for my life and for my business, it was like a mirror was held up to me to show me just how dysregulated I was. And so that was really where, like earlier this year, I started to actually learn and understand what does it mean to be dysregulated? What is happening in your body? And how is this limiting the potential of what I'm able to step into within myself and within my business as well? And when I was able to see just how much being dysregulated was creating resistance in business, creating friction, and just making the whole growth process feel so much harder, that's where I started to really make it a priority. And for me, like regulating my nervous system is as simple as just coming back to my breath. You know, I don't overcomplicate it. It's just a matter of putting myself back in my body. And for so long, like during that relationship, I was so disassociated from my body. So that was like a really big journey to start to come back into myself and actually allow myself to feel again. And when I started to allow myself to feel again, then I was aware of like where I was dysregulated and what I needed to shift to be able to help myself get to that next level. So the last like 12-ish months for me have been such a massive journey of that. And like the version of myself that I am now versus the version of myself I was 12 months ago is massively different. Like if you met me then, you would be able to feel the dysregulation and it was almost as like the confidence that I would put out was a mask to the
Yeah.
dysregulation that was happening below the surface. But I wasn't even aware of that at that point. Versus now, like the confidence and the grounding that you see and you feel, it is what it is. It's not a mask for anything.
Yeah, it's funny because there's like sort of old phrases that you hear when you're younger and they mean nothing, like when you're, in a state and people go, just stop a minute, take a breath. And you just hear it as a
Mm,
flippant comment, but actually that is literally what you need to do. Just stop, take a breath, and then actually regulate and calm your
mm.
nervous system down. It's incredible. So what's next for you?
Oh, what's next for me? So 2025, I'm projecting it to be a massive year for me now that I'm like in a place where I am so much more grounded. I'm standing in my power so much more than I was 12 months ago. Now it's about leveling up business to a whole other realm. I'm really stepping into the space of no longer just serving new business owners, but now starting to actually serve multi 6 and 7 figure business owners in elevating their branding and leading their creative teams to be able to integrate their brand across all aspects of their business. So big shifts coming for me and like a massive up level required in that as well, where it's like shedding an old identity and really starting to step into a whole new one. But I'm very excited because I know that like this next level, even though there's so much like discomfort coming up within it, like this is that next step in that big vision that I really do have for myself.
And that is no mean feat because brand is so personal. It's not something that you can just lift and shift from organization to organization because they're all going to have their own set of values, their own vision, their own mission. Um, so that's not easy, but it is a very creative field to be in.
Yeah, completely. And it's interesting because I reflect on my journey over the last, I'm coming up on 4 years in business this month. And so I'm reflecting on my journey over the last 4 years. And one thing that has always been so evident is how my personal brand has really been an initiation into this next level of myself. And so, it's really exciting as I step into 2025, and I've got video like vlogs from the very start of my journey at 22 years old when I was quitting my degree and I was quitting my job, and I was watching back some of those videos last night as I'm like mashing up some content with it. And it was just such a beautiful feeling, like to be able to see the physical growth that's happened, the physical transformation, like the energy and the excitement and the naivety I had when first starting my business to now like the strength and the power and the grounding that I bring to what I do today as well. So yeah, that's like one thing that I'm such a strong believer in. And when I again think of those keynote speeches I do, it's all speaking into how your personal brand is that initiation into your higher self. And if you start to treat your personal brand in that way, that's how you will continuously expand and unlock new levels of your life and your business as well.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Personal brand is everything. It's who you are. And if people don't know what your brand is, why would they buy into what you're trying to sell or promote?
Exactly.
So how do people get hold of you then, Emily?
Yeah, I'm super easy to get in touch with. Instagram is where I am the most active. So you can come and say hi. I'm at Empower with M on Instagram. Or if you do want to listen to my podcast, it's been active for the last 4 years now, and you can go right back to before I even had my business and listen to 22-year-old M and the excitement and the challenges that she went through in that moment. So that's the Empower with M podcast if you do want to have a listen to that.
Oh, Emily, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. It's been absolutely brilliant. Any last words?
Oh, I would say the thing that I really love to always express, like in this final part of a podcast, is the importance of trusting in yourself and the importance of like coming back and strengthening that connection you have to self-trust. And to relay back to what we've spoken about in this episode, like when I first started my business, there was so much self-trust there. And then there were different factors like the burnout and the DV relationship that really like created a lot of dysregulation within me, which then broke a lot of that self-trust I had. And what I know to be true about business is the more trust you have in yourself, the further you are going to be able to go. So if you can actively be working on strengthening that muscle, growing that self-trust, then you're going to be able to step into so many incredible things in this journey through business that you go through. So that's the final note that I want to add there to close things off.
Very wise words, Emily. Thank you so much for coming on today and for waking up early and looking so glam for 8 a.m. in the Gold Coast. You certainly look a lot warmer than what I am here as well.
A little too warm here at the moment.
Thank you so, so much.
Thanks, Jim.